There are some, shall we say, strong opinions about the Stranger Things Secret Lair. I'm not a very judgmental person and will never turn away a player who's playing one of these as their commander. So while I'm not planning on buying it myself, I thought it would be nice for those who are planning on buying it if there was a deck tech out there for them. So this one, Secret Lair purchaser, is for you. Oh yeah, it's also for you if you like combo decks. Let's go! I'm not much of a Spike, and I'm only occasionally a Timmy. Most of the time, I'm a Johnny. I like expressing my creativity through deck building, and not so much through editing YouTube videos. But that's sort of a necessity if you're planning to put deck techs on YouTube. I digress. I'm a Johnny, but occasionally I like dipping my toes into the other two personalities as well. This deck tech does that. Today I'm presenting for your enjoyment an 11, the Mage, and Mike, the Dungeon Master, friends forever, combo deck. I noticed that Mike just has a ton of combos that he can go off with, so I thought this one might be fun. First off, let's meet these two commanders properly. 11 is a 4-mana Grixis commander with a 3/5 body. She makes our maximum hand size her name, and has whenever 11 attacks, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Then if you have 11 or more cards in hand, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost, while shouting 11 at the top of your lungs. Mike, meanwhile, is a Selesnyan hippie who costs 3 mana, has a 2/2 body, and an ability that says pay 2 mana and tap Mike. Choose target creature card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Return it to the battlefield tapped. So this deck is going to mostly use Mike to combo off, but it's also got some very hard to cast sorceries, ensuring that 11 gets her fair share of use, and making our deck a little harder to counteract, as shutting down the combos isn't necessarily enough for your opponents to stop you. Before moving on, I just want to mention that minus the commanders who will cost you whatever the Secret Lair is going for, this deck will run you roughly $118.46 minus the basic lands, if you're buying it from TCG Player. And if you are, please consider buying at my link in the video description below. I don't do very many combo decks, so I'm not exactly sure how to go about presenting this one. So I'm just going to start with something that I am comfortable with, finding all 5 of our colors. Our colorful lands are Cascading Cataracts, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, and all 5 thriving lands, Thriving Bluff, Grove, Heath, Isle, and more. If you can't tell, we're keeping it budget. Our utility lands will be Buried Ruin, Reliquary Tower, Labyrinth of Scophos, and Maze of Ith. Those last 2 are specifically meant to keep 11 alive through her attacks, while simultaneously leaving her as a big-butted blocker. Our basic lands are going to be 3 plains, 4 islands, 4 swamps, 4 mountains, and 8 forests. We're leaning heavily on green thanks to our next section, Ramp. So these ramp spells are going to lean heavily into giving us our 5 colors, just like our lands do. If you want to build 5 color on a budget, you've got to set up a ramp and land package that can find all of those colors. This is going to lead us into playing Arcane Signet, Prismatic Lens, Rampant Growth, Commander's Sphere, Cultivate, Darksteel Ingot, Path to the Festival, and Migration Path. We're also running 3 spells that sort of fit in this section, but have more interesting applications. These are Crop Rotation, Thought Vessel, and Gemstone Array. Thought Vessel gives us an unlimited hand size, which helps enable 11. Gemstone Array is necessary due to one of our combos, but can also store up mana to color fix. And Crop Rotation? Well, Crop Rotation can find any land. We're going to usually want to make sure it finds one of our colors for us, or Maze of Ith. It is an instant, so a funny thing to do with it is to find Maze of Ith in response to someone attacking you with their big bad. It's not the best use, necessarily, but it's a good use, and a funny one. Okay, now that we're rolling and talking about mana, I want to talk about infinite mana. Yes, it's our first combo. This combo requires Mike, obviously. Thornbite Staff equipped to Mike, a Sacrifice Outlet, we'll use Ashnod's Altar for this example, and one of Cathodian or Composite Golem. And actually, Ashnod's Altar is only really needed if you're doing the Cathodian version. If you've got Composite Golem, that's one less combo piece that you'll need. Now then, equip Thornbite Staff to Mike. Sacrifice the Golem for mana, and then tap Mike to bring it back from the graveyard. Sacrifice it again, which will untap Mike, and then just repeat that process. Do that until you have more than enough mana to win the game. Obviously, if you're doing the Cathodian method, it would be good to have Gemstone Array on the battlefield too. There are some mana sinks in this deck that lots of colorless mana can be useful for, though they aren't game-winning on their own. Now that we've gotten our feet wet with infinite mana, let's turn up the heat with infinite creatures. This is our Intruder Alarm combo. For it, we need Mike, Ashnod's Altar, and Intruder Alarm on the battlefield, and then we can cast one of Deep Forest Hermit, Hornet Queen, or Mere Battlesphere. Sacrifice your token-producing creature, and then tap Mike to bring it back. Intruder Alarm will untap Mike. You'll create 4 more tokens, and are free to repeat this process as many times as you desire. Go infinitely wide and swing in for the kills. We also have a combo that requires Mike to be an artifact. This is the Clock of Omens combo. It requires that we have Mike, a sacrifice outlet like Quark Clan Ironworks, or Ashnod's Altar, and Clock of Omens in play. Now cast one of these spells: Ashnod's Transmogrant, Thran Forge, Transmogrifying Lycid, or Phyrexian Scriptures. With these we can turn Mike into an artifact. Now we cast Mere Battlesphere, create its tokens, and sacrifice it to the Ironworks. Return it with Mike, untap Mike using Clock of Omens and the Mere tokens, and repeat the process. The relevant benefits this one gives are infinite Mere tokens, infinite death triggers, and ETB triggers. There is one lower maintenance way to get the combo in, and that is through creatures that untap Mike themselves. This does require Mike and Ashnod's Altar to be on the battlefield. Then cast one of Corridor Monitor, Bounding Krasis, Village Bellringer, Sky Husser, or Great Oak Guardian. Now sacrifice it. Tap Mike with those 2 colorless mana from Ashnod's Altar and bring it back. It'll untap Mike. Repeat this process as many times as you want. That results in infinite death and enters the battlefield triggers. With that last combo in mind, we are going to need some payoff cards for our ETBs and death triggers. And heck, even without comboing off, we've got plenty of creatures to put on the battlefield or sacrifice. These payoff cards are Cruel Celebrant, Zulaport Cutthroat, Hissing Iguanar, Judith the Scourge Diva, and Spiteful Prankster. I went with these because they drain or burn our opponent's life totals out directly. Putting in a token machine like Annex Harden in the Forge would work too, though. Now we've talked so much about Mike, let's talk about Eleven for a second. Our primary goal with her is to draw cards, and once we have enough of them, to cast something awesome for free. For this we have Brilliant Ultimatum, Eerie Ultimatum, Emergent Ultimatum, Inspired Ultimatum, Runus Ultimatum, Conflux, and Diabolic Tutor. Yes, one of these is not like the others. Diabolic Tutor is needed though, as a spell to help find the artifact combo pieces in our deck. The rest of these are just, well, potentially game-changing when cast. We are through most of the deck now, but have a couple of support categories left: removal and card advantage. So let's start with removal. For this we're running Aura Blast, Cleansing Wildfire, Dire Strain Rampage, Dismantling Blow, Rending Vines, Mystic Melting, Overwhelming Intellect, and Decree of Pain. Obviously my intention here was to try to keep our hand size up, while removing big threats. And speaking of keeping our hand size up, we have these cards for card advantage: Azure Mage, Keep Watch, Eon Chronicler, Fairy Formation, Rush of Knowledge, Overflowing Insight, Beck and Call, and Creeping Renaissance. You'll notice that several of these have mana outlets. Combined with our infinite mana combo, these can help us dig deep into our library for game-ending combo pieces. The same goes for the Beck side of Beck and Call, as long as we're doing an infinite ETB loop. I do want to mention a few upgrades to this deck. First of all, this deck is great at finding combo pieces as long as those pieces have a color, but some of our most important combo pieces are colorless artifacts. If you're having trouble finding those when playing this deck, consider adding a black tutor card. It can be any of them. I recommend Razaketh's Right. Flash can be super helpful in combo decks, and I would like to recommend for this one Leyline of Anticipation, Tidal Barracuda, and maybe Teferi Mage of Zhalfir. The problem with Teferi is that it only works with creature cards. Another creature for our infinite mana combo is Su-Chi. Don't buy this card, it costs $150 and is no better than Cathodian in this deck. To a similar end, you have Deranged Hermit for redundancy to our infinite creature combos. It's $100. I wouldn't recommend buying either of these unless you've got deep pockets, but if you already own them, there's no harm in using them. If you need another mana sink or more card draw, Soul of Ravnica is an expensive card draw engine, mana-wise, but infinitely repeatable, and we're in 5 colors. My favorite card for this deck that I didn't use because I wasn't sure that I'd have enough cards in hand to actually make it work is Neverending Torment. If you lean more into 11 than you do Mike, which I did not, this would be a hilarious card to end the game with. Now let's wrap this deck tech up in style with the final 5 cards in the deck in a segment that I have chosen to call The Final Countdown! In today's Final Countdown, we're going to look at the best support cards for this deck. At number 5, we have a Mana Rock and so much more. This card is Crowded Crypt, and it costs 2 and a black to cast. It can tap to add a black mana to our mana pool, and has whenever a creature you control dies, put a corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. And it also has pay 4 mana and 2 black mana, tap, and sacrifice Crowded Crypt. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed for each corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. So we can use this as a mana rock early on, and then once we've gotten one of our infinite combo loops going, we can put as many counters on this as we want, and create as many zombies as we want. The only thing that pushes this back to number 5 for me is that I wish they had haste. You know what we don't have in this deck? Enchantments. Well, we have 2, but one of them is a Saga that will end up sacrificing itself, and the other one is Intruder Alarm, which is one of our combo pieces, and we won't be putting that down unless we intend to win with it almost immediately. So at number 4, we have, of course, the enchantment board wipe, Tranquil Path. It also lets you draw a card to replace itself. It's not flashy, but the Enchantress player will not be pleased. Moving along to number 3, we have a card that simply wants to get value out of Mike, rather than comboing off with him. This card is Angel of Despair. With Ashnod's Altar and Mike in play, Angel of Despair will let you sacrifice her, revive her, and destroy a target permanent every turn. Simple and effective removal with a 5/5 flying body. Down to number 2, we have a card that is one of a kind in this deck, Marchesa's Smuggler. Mike does well with this card because he wants haste. 11 does well with this card because she wants haste and to not be blocked. Most of these cards either support Mike or the rest of the 99. This one is so high because it cares about 11 too. But let's not wait any longer for number 1. I can't emphasize enough how awesome Flash is in combo decks. It allows you to throw your combo pieces out there at times where people will struggle to react to them, and that allows you to combo off in peace. So without further ado, our number 1 card is Emergence Zone. Keep this thing quietly sitting on your board until you're ready to combo off, and watch yourself win the game at a time when nobody can counter your pieces. I don't always play combo decks, but when I do, I play them with Emergence Zone. If you've stuck through to the end of this, I want to thank you for watching. I also want to thank my patrons for their support, especially Marie Garand, whose name is floating on the screen. You guys help with your pocketbooks, and that's not always the easiest way to help, so thank you. The next deck I post up is going to be Geralf, Visionary Stitcher. I hope that you'll tune in for that one too. Now then, I'll see you all later. Have a great weekend.